Hi, I'm Chris Nesi from the House of EdTech Podcast, a part of the Education Podcast Network, just like the show you're listening to right now. Shows on the network are individually owned and opinions expressed may not reflect others. Find other interesting education podcasts at edupodcastnetwork.com.
Hey, welcome back. Steve here, and today I'm talking with Mike Kinney. Mike taught 5th grade for 19 years, and during that time, he realized that many of his students came to 5th grade lacking basic math fact fluency. Eventually, this led Mike to developing an app for helping make math easier to learn. That app is our focus today. It's called MathFactLab. So much to learn and understand. Thanks for listening. Thanks for sharing. And oh, by the way, before you go, it'd be so cool if you took a minute to help out the podcast. How could you do that? Glad you asked that question. Here are 3 ways. 1, you could tell a friend and share links. 2, you could go to my website and leave a review and subscribe. Or 3, you could click on the link on my website homepage where it says, Buy me a coffee. And by doing this, you could donate $1 or $2 to help me address the costs associated with producing the podcast. That would be so cool. You are awesome. Enjoy the show.
It's the Education Podcast, your favorite show, with lots of groovy guests and they share what they know. So crank it up to 10 and let your neighbors know that here's another show with Dr. Steve Milletto. Teaching, learning, leading, K-12. Teaching, learning, leading, K-12. Teaching, learning, leading, K-12. With Dr. Steve Milletto.
Mike Kinney taught 5th grade for 19 years, 4 in England and 15 in Vermont. Mike is the designer of MathFactLab. MathFactLab is based on the idea that pattern recognition makes math easier to learn. Each year, Mike found that many of his students came to 5th grade lacking basic math fact fluency. Frustrated that the math fact materials commercially available did not match what research recommended, he gradually came to the conclusion that he ought to try creating his own MathFact program. MathFactLab is the result of several years of effort, much research, a great heap of advice, many drafts, and lots of trial and error in Mike's classroom and beyond. Mike has degrees from the University of Notre Dame, the College of William and Mary, and the Vermont Mathematics Initiative at UVM. Our focus today is Mike's MathFactLab. Mike, thanks so much for being on the show, and say hi to everyone.
Hello, everyone, and hello, Stephen, and thanks so much for inviting me. I'm very glad to be here.
Oh, great to have you here. And I'm someone who, I love math as a kid, and there are times as an adult I loved it, but eventually I started running into some interesting difficulty along the way, and I said, I kind of going to go this other direction. But so what I want to start off with here is that this is cool to me that there's some things that you're going to talk about that probably may have helped me back when if we could have had this app type of stuff at the time. And let's go from there. So you taught 5th grade for 19 years. What is something that you liked about teaching 5th graders?
Oh, I love teaching 5th graders. I've kind of found them to be, it's sort of, for me, 5th grade is sort of a sweet spot in a child's development. They're old enough to tie their own shoes, blow their own nose, and but not so old that they have kind of give their teachers attitude. They're kind of,
love it.
That sort of middle school attitude typically hasn't crept in yet by 5th grade. They're still sort of sweet and pliable and eager to please and eager to learn. So I lucked out landing in 5th grade.
That's so cool. I love it. It's such an awesome age.
Yeah.
All right. So let's talk about you for a minute. Why did you seek your master's in mathematics? Because I read something that you wrote that said that you really didn't quite understand math and learning until you got your master's. So can you talk about that?
Yeah. I mean, I was a good math student through school. But my 17 or 18-year-old mind had kind of concluded that I had already reached the limits of not my math potential, but like the reason for studying math. It no longer made sense because, I was studying calculus, I think, in my senior year, and I wasn't able to apply that knowledge in any way. And so math didn't seem connected to my life at all. I don't know, maybe like 5 or 6 years later, I was on a vacation somewhere. I was talking to this guy and he goes, "You don't understand what you're doing. It's like going to the gym. When you do that mathematics, you are just making your brain so much stronger. Don't worry about the application of it, but you are going to be able to expand your ability to think and reason," which I wish maybe my teachers had mentioned to me. at 17 or 18. So, when I got to college, I think I had to take one more semester of math, and that's it. And I thought that my math career is done. But when I got to started teaching fifth grade math in Vermont, my first 4 years in England, I was actually just teaching English to the English, so I I didn't teach math at all. But when I got to Vermont, I started realizing pretty quickly, one, I really liked teaching it, and two, I wasn't particularly good at it. And so when I discovered there was this program called the Vermont Mathematics Initiative, which was aimed at, non-math specialists, K-8 teachers, I thought, I'm gonna give this a try and, see what I learn. And what I discovered was that I was being taught mathematics kind of the way I wish I had been taught. Everything was grounded in reasoning, and the instruction always helped you take the next step yourself, as opposed to being taught procedures and then told to memorize those procedures. Instead, it was like giving you the ability to reason to the next step and understand the mathematics that we were covering.
That's awesome. I love it. It's funny because of what you said about, at 17 or 18. So mine came a few years later. That's, as I started going, I don't know, maybe I'm at the end of my mathematics understanding. I wish I'd had somebody say that to me too, because that would have been awesome, because I am the father of both of my sons became engineers, and I married a math. My wife is a math person, and she has a master's in math and understands all this stuff. And so I'm a history major in the family, and my kids.
Oh, so was I.
Oh, cool. Awesome. Now this is even better, because what I was going to say was I'd all the time tell my kids, I can help you with some of that math. And they'd look at me and go, yeah, Dad, you go back to history. All right.
Yeah. It's like my dad, when he tried to help me, it was like, I can help you, but it's going to take me about an hour to get myself caught up on the mathematics to be able to help you.
Nice. I like that. I can identify with that. Let me say that too. Good stuff. All right. So talk for a minute about what is something that causes fifth graders issues with understanding and learning mathematics. I mean, what have you learned about some of the difficulty that they might have, or, supposed, maybe not real difficulties, but things that they think are difficult?
The content in fifth grade is pretty challenging. So at the beginning of the year, we're doing place value and we're expanding that. And that's just kind of taking the next step, going down to the thousands, going up to millions. That's not too challenging. And then expanding our whole number multiplication division, that's not too terribly difficult. But when you get to adding fractions with unlike denominators, when you get to multiplying fractions, when you're getting to division of fractions, these are things that a lot of adults can't do. And you want your students to not only be able to multiply fractions, but you want to understand what the heck's going on when you're multiplying a fraction. These are kids who are showing up assuming that anytime you multiply, the product is going to be larger than the two factors that are being multiplied. So it's quite a shock for them that you are not only that you can multiply and end up with something smaller, that even fractions are a struggle sometimes, just remembering what a numerator and denominator is, and now they're multiplying and trying to understand what that product means. So there's a lot of challenge in fifth grade math with the content. So if a student shows up and they're still adding on their fingers, when they're adding single digits on their fingers or subtracting, when they don't have their basic multiplication facts down, it's like going on a long bicycle trip with a bike with soft tires or a rusty chain. It's going to be a drag. So my job as the teacher was to say, let's see what we can do to tune that bicycle up before we go on this journey.
Nice analogy, by the way. I like that.
I've used it before.
I like that. All right. So you initially created some math flashcards that were successful in helping students understand and learn math. What made these flashcards, positively impactful? I mean, why'd they work?
Yeah, I'll back up a little. So my first couple of years in the Vermont Mathematics Initiative, I came across the research on best practices and fact fluency development. Up until that point, I thought I was doing a great job by having my students memorize their facts and taking like weekly time tests. Basically the same thing I had done as a child and what my colleagues were doing in their classes. But the research that I came across kind of really pulled the carpet out from under me, I suppose I could say, because there's plenty of research showing that time tests can lead to math anxiety, and I don't want to be, as a teacher, I didn't want to be responsible for dooming students to years of mathematics anxiety. So I didn't want to be a part of that. Also, there's research dating back as far as the 1930s showing that a memorization approach to facts doesn't really work. You will have some students who appear to have memorized successfully, and you'll have other students who don't. But even those students who appear to have memorized successfully, what they're most likely doing is internalizing strategies, that they are implicitly understanding strategies and applying those. And so what the research is saying is that teachers need to explicitly go over strategies that will help students construct new fact knowledge from previously mastered facts. I don't know what 6 times 7 is, but I do know what 3 times 7 is. Can I use 3 7s to build 6 7s? Yes, if you use the strategy of doubling 3 groups, you can form 6 groups. So if I know 3 7s is 21, I can say, okay, if I double that, I will then know what 6 7s is. And so therefore, you have a way to get to 6 7s that isn't dependent on memory. With enough practice, most likely it'll be embedded in memory, but it got there through application of strategy versus pure memorization. So I came across this research, and to continue there, also that students should be not only using strategies, but those problems should be visually represented so that they can see pictures. They can see those 3 7s and the other 3 7s. They can see all 42 dots in one way or another. And so when I came across all that research, I was like, great, I'm going to start doing that. But when I started looking for material to support me doing that, it wasn't available. It was all in the research articles, but nowhere else could I say, oh, I want to buy a program that matches what the research is telling me to do. And so as my 3rd year at VMI came up, and we're asked to create a year-long action research project, I thought, what a perfect opportunity to put these theories into practice, to create some sort of program to help my students learn their facts in a way that matches best practice. And so that led to the flashcards you mentioned. The flashcards would have things like, they would have a problem at the top, just like a traditional flashcard, 7 times 8. But then unlike a traditional flashcard, it would then provide a strategy. So 7 groups can be formed by combining 5 groups and 2 groups. So the flashcard would have a picture of, say, 5 8s plus 2 8s. You would see 5 8s, and you would see 2 8s, and you'd realize, oh, I could combine those to form 7 8s. So I can take 40 and 16 and build 56. And so I made hundreds of these flashcards at various levels, and I had my students use them. And it showed promise, but logistically, it was very challenging to get all my students to be practicing at the just right level, when they have a stack of cards, and to be taken it seriously as opposed to going, oh yeah, Mr. Kenny, I'm working really hard back here. And you can just see that, they're just like flipping through a pile of cards. And so a couple of years later, maybe I'm jumping ahead here, we got, our students got Chromebooks, and suddenly, well, I don't know when it was, but at some point, not that long thereafter, I realized, I could take all these images and put them onto like leveled Google slideshows. And then it wouldn't be quite an interactive program, but at least it would be far more manageable than having to print, cut, distribute huge stacks of flashcards.
I can only imagine. Yes, that was you start going, okay, this is going to take a little bit. And I got to tell you, first of all, you give me flashbacks right there when you said, like the young man sitting in the back of the room going, yes, I'm working hard. Here we go. Yes. Hey, this is good. Just how long do you think he's going to stay? I'm going to convince him that I'm learning this here. I thought that was funny. I'm pretty sure I might have been that same kid at some point.
Oh, no doubt. No doubt we all were.
But so what's cool is the timing of things. So the whole idea of the Chromebooks being introduced to the school helped out here. I mean, from what I read that you said. So could you talk about why that, what aspect of that Chromebook then, because it's neat when timing happens, right? The schools start ordering whether it's Chromebook or a laptop or whatever it is, and the kids now have access. So could you talk a little bit about that timing of that working on your
I
on the
think,
side of the kids?
Timing has a lot to do with when inventions come out, because what is technically available to the inventor, and I suppose teachers are inventors in a way, and so having access to a class set of Chromebooks suddenly meant I could build Google Slides. I could take those images and put them on there so as students clicked, they would work through their fours if they were on, I don't know, level E in the program. And they would be able to see 2 groups plus 2 groups, and they could practice those to figure out how to combine them to form 4 groups. And it took the logistics out of it. I could meet with Joey for a few minutes, interview him, say, all right, I think this is a good level for you to start with. And when Joey had sufficient practice, he could come up. We could do a quick interview. I also built like little assessments where Joey and I would flip through them together. If he could answer all his 4s really well, and he could show me that he still retained fact fluency with the previously mastered facts, I'd say, all right, Joey, you're ready for level F on the program, and off he would go. And it suddenly became manageable. Before it was like theoretically possible, but I had to put my heart and soul into it, and other things had to give way because so much time was taken doing it. Now it was quick, it was easy because technology was there. It wasn't fully interactive like a true, web app, but it showed the potential it showed that what the researchers said would work actually did work.
That's cool. That's really awesome. And like you said, the timing of because all the things that made that possible had to come together too, which is really cool.
Exactly. Yeah.
All right. So now I'm really going to skip forward.
Okay.
Because eventually this leads you to creating MathFactLab, the app. I mean, tell us what it does and how it works. And, if you want to give us a little history there that build up to it, that'd be great.
Yeah, I'll give you a little history. So I had a colleague at my school who was also, I shared these slideshows with her, and she was using them in her classroom. Her brother-in-law was a developer who liked to sort of dabble in side projects, and he expressed interest in turning what I was doing into an app. And so I liked that idea, thought about it for a while, and decided to take a leave of absence for a year to be able to spend a whole year dedicating myself to designing and building this app. The flashcards and the Google slideshows were just multiplication division, but if this is going to be a fact fluency program, it needed all 4 operations, addition, subtraction, multiplication, division. So I took the year off. He and I met quite a few times, but then COVID kicked in. His main job was was struggling at that point, and so he didn't have the time to dedicate to what would eventually became MathFactLab. So I had to find another developer, which I eventually did do. But it was sort of without his interest, I don't think I ever would have taken the leap. So I'm grateful to him for that. And so what MathFactLab does basically is it applies the research on fact fluency by giving students the opportunity to go from initial understanding to automaticity or near automaticity in a way that builds number sense, in a way that helps students recognize that mathematics is reasoning based, in a way that's not dependent on a student's memorization abilities, but instead gives them the opportunity to apply strategies until the point that strategy application either becomes automatic or is nearly automatic. And so students march through a series of levels in the program, which I didn't design. They're based on the work of Jennifer Bay Williams. I'm not sure if you're familiar with her, but she's one of the big names in mathematics education. And so the sequence that she suggests is what MathFactLab's based on. So for example, in multiplication division, It makes most sense if students learn their twos, which they pretty much already know because they know their doubles from addition, then their tens, which are pretty easy if you learn to just shift the place value, and their fives. And those are called the foundational facts. And when you have those down, students can then use those two tens and fives to construct the other facts, which are known as their derived facts, like their threes, their fours, and so on from there. So a lot of it's not really my invention. It's just pooling what I read and kind of putting it all into one source. It was basically, it's like a teacher's wish list, or certainly it was my wish list of this is what I want my students to have available to them. And so I was able to then return to the classroom after my leave of absence and use MathFactLab with my own students for 3 years and really see, oh yeah, this works. So now when we get to adding fractions with unlike denominators, the students aren't struggling to figure out what a common denominator of 4 and 6 is, or 3 and 8. They're able, because they know their multiples so well, those common denominators would jump out at them.
That's awesome. Appreciate you sharing that. That's it's neat how the impact, just like you're talking about timing of technology and so forth, helped. Also, the timing of having access to someone who kind of helped you with that fire of let's take this another step. What a cool thing.
Yeah, if it weren't for him, I'd be still using those slideshows. Yeah.
Gotcha. So awesome. Yeah. One of the things that I want to make sure I ask is, MathFactLab, what ages are you targeting here? What's your audience that you're focused on?
We're saying first grade and up because although we do have kindergarten students using it. So like there are state standards for fact fluency in first grade. Is that students should be able to add fluently any facts that add up to 10. So they're called within 10 facts. And my initial assumption was that my customers would be elementary school teachers and administrators, but we're in a lot of middle schools and we're even in high schools because there's a lot of students showing up to middle school who still lack that fact fluency. Between COVID and the fact that I think a lot of teachers over the years discovered that the old way didn't work, but they had no new way available to them. So it often meant, well, I don't want to do any damage to my students, but I don't have a better option. So let's just pray that they don't actually, that they don't need the fact fluency practice. Let's just hope they're just going to get that fluency through osmosis, which unfortunately doesn't happen for most students. So yeah, we're selling from first grade and up. There's like interventionists in high schools that are using our program to help those students, whether maybe they're new Americans and they haven't had proper schooling, or maybe they just never got that opportunity for fact fluency practice along the way.
This is awesome because I'm a former high school principal, and one of the things that we would do with our feeder middle schools is share with them, identify the kids that you're sending forward that are going to probably fail, or that you anticipate, and make sure that you tell us who they are. And then we had a program that we designed to address those kids who worked with some very strong mathematics teachers and language teachers to try and help them with their acquisition of their vocabulary to kind of move them up into the level 2. And so it's powerful listening to this because I know what you're talking about. I can see why a high school would be using your app because there's always some group that needs some extra attention in those areas, and to get them on track to be able to move forward, it's important to have some tool that you can use to help you with that. So very cool that it's a wide range like that. I had to ask that question because I started thinking, is it just the 5th grade that's lucky here, or?
Yeah.
And the answer is no. So
it's really, anyone who needs fact fluency practice, and there's nothing gamey or kiddie about it. There's no dancing bears or cartoon characters on it, so older students don't feel insulted when asked to use it.
Gotcha. That's awesome stuff. So, all right. So, share with everyone how they go about getting MathFactLab and why they would want to, and is it just for classroom teachers?
The bulk of our customers are schools, and or school districts. But oftentimes schools or school districts end up purchasing after a teacher has been using it in their classroom for a year. So often the teachers are sort of the pioneers. They bring it in, they test it out. There might be a teacher with a strong reputation, and they sort of pass on the word that, hey, I've been using this tool and it's made a strong difference. And then administrators get on board with the money to support it. We do also sell to families as well. So if your school's not helping your students get that fact fluency need, sometimes parents will step in and do it at home. I think it's more of a challenge it's a lot easier to get students to work on something hard at school than it is for parents to do that at home. But it is available to them. So yeah, anyone interested can go on to MathFactLab.com, go to our pricing page. We also we offer pilots, so you can try an 8-week pilot as a teacher, or if you're an administrator, you can request an 8-week pilot for your school or district and see if MathFactLab is a good fit for you.
That is awesome. Love it. Actually, I was asking that question to see if you did have some parents who might have reached out to you at some point or something like that. So I like that. It is available. So good stuff. All right. So I spent some time on your website going around and using it and looking at it. And one of the things that, one of the pages that really grabbed my attention was that you have some frequently asked questions. And one of these questions just really kind of, because I've heard you mention these words a couple of times, and so I wanted to go there, which is this. It said the following: what is the difference between fluency and automaticity? So can you talk about that just a little bit? Because there was a little bit of mention of it in there, and I was wondering if we could go there for a minute.
That's a great question. So automaticity is an element of fluency, or, well, efficiency is an element of fluency. So fluency should have, fluency does have speed to it, but it also has flexibility that I should be able to, if we're talking about, say we're talking about 6/7 again, that ideally I should be able to get there more than one way, that maybe, and it depends on that situation, but I could get there with 3/7 and 3/7, as I mentioned previously, but also maybe I could build it with 5/7 and 1/7, or maybe if I know, what did I say, 6/7, if I know 7/7, maybe I could even go down. If you're thinking mathematically, there is a web of approaches that you can take to solve any problem. And if you really have sort of fluency with any sort of mathematical skill, that means you can get there. You can get from point A to point B in multiple ways, and you know what you're doing. I mean, sometimes especially before cell phones and mobile apps, I knew how to get from one point to another only one way, and if there was a roadblock on that way, I was lost unless I pulled out a map. And so, ideally, what we're hoping is that our students, if they have fluency with any sort of procedure or any sort of skill, that they can navigate around those roadblocks, that they can find different ways. So you also have accuracy. So you have fluency, you have flexibility, you have sort of appropriateness. Are you taking a strategy that makes sense in this situation? And yes, you have efficiency, which is where I'm talking about automaticity. It doesn't have to be automatic. It needs to be timely. Great if you can solve 7 times 8, but if you're taking 30 seconds to do so, that is not fluent yet.
Gotcha. And I think that's so important, because I think sometimes, I don't know, I think as a kid we can fool adults into thinking that we we get it, and we maybe don't really get it, and maybe it's just that we've memorized something to do right there with something, as opposed to really understand.
Yeah, and that hopefully is the goal of math education nowadays, is really get at that understanding rather than just delivering that correct answer.
Love it. Love it. Mike, where can our listeners find additional information, connect, and learn more?
Really, the simplest place is our website. If you're an administrator, you'll see on our pricing page you can there's a Learn More button, and if you click that Learn More button, you can schedule a call with me so that we can meet, and I can help you see if MathFactLab would be a good fit for your school, or just answer any questions you might have even after this podcast.
Awesome, and I'll put that information in the show notes so they can go right there.
Super.
So I got two more questions, and here we go.
Sure.
If you had a chance to talk with an audience of classroom mathematics teachers, what is something that you would want them talking about when they left your talk?
Well, I suppose ultimately, I guess I would want them thinking about, and this wouldn't just be math facts, but that are they teaching for understanding? Because if you can teach for understanding, I think everything else falls in place. If you can get your students to be able to reason to the solution and be able to have, strategic mathematical conversations about how they got there and learning from others on that route, as opposed to following procedures, then you're building mathematicians for life. When you're just helping a student find an answer to a problem by following sort of an algorithm only, you're helping them do something that a calculator can do. But we're trying to raise citizens, who can think and reason. And so I think our math lessons should help our students do that.
Love it. Great answer. All right, last question for you, Mike, and it's a question that I like to ask my guests, and it goes like this. Do you have a teacher in your past who made a difference in your life? If so, who was it, and what would you say if given the chance to say thank you?
Yeah, I always meant to send him a thank you letter, and I never did. He was my 8th grade history teacher, social studies teacher. His name was Mr. Sherman. In 8th grade, my dad was in the Army, and so we were stationed at West Point at the time, and so I was in 8th grade at West Point Elementary School, and he taught history through understanding. He helped us become historians. We had to write an essay on the beginning of the the causes of the Battle of Lexington, and he purposely set us up with primary and secondary sources and unreliable sources. And then the real challenge was, after we wrote it, we then had to defend the essay and the decisions we made in writing that essay. And he purposely led us into traps, which were really like the learning experience, that when we were quoting secondary sources as if they were primary sources, he helped us learn how to see the difference between the two and not get caught up in that. And so if Mr. Sherman's out there still, he's probably a very old man at this point. I very much want to say thank you for all that you taught me.
That is awesome. Thank you so much, Mike. That is so cool. Mike, thank you so much for talking with us about MathFactLab. Great information. What a cool tool. Love it. Wishing you the best in all you do.
Thank you, Stephen. It's been a pleasure.
Hey, you have been listening to Teaching, Learning, Leading K-12, a podcast to help you help kids achieve their dreams. Teaching, Learning, Leading K-12 is a member of the Education Podcast Network. Podcasts for educators, podcasts by educators. Teaching, Learning, Leading K-12 is a member of the podcast network based in Canada called Voice Ed Radio. Voice Ed Radio, your voice is right here. The opinions expressed on Teaching, Learning, Leading K-12 are those of the guests and host. Teaching, Learning, Leading K-12 is intended to share ideas, advice, and suggestions. Teaching, Learning, Leading K-12 is produced for educational purposes. Hey, thanks for listening. It would be awesome if you visited my website at stephenmiletto.com and connected with me, left a review, and listened to more episodes. And by the way, you could also share it with your friends, with your family, and your colleagues. Thanks so much. You're awesome.